Your reaction has ceased. You no longer despise them. What used to stab you in the heart now hardly registers. Everything that was previously a whirlwind of mayhem that might ruin your day now seems like background noise from a galaxy far away. The numbness that comes from your soul returning to itself when it has finished its mission is the calm sovereignty. The route to psychological completeness, or individuation, according to Carl Jung, is not one of constant reactivity, but rather one of growing inner quiet. Emotional detachment is not a sign of shutting down, but rather of rising above the drama level, where one's reaction was formerly their sole means of communication. Emotions aren't our own when we're subconsciously involved with another. They're borrowed, stimulated, or set off by patterns we haven't seen. Surprisingly, though, you begin to detach from the disorder as your mind starts to untangle itself, as shadow work removes the fog. There was a time when you felt responsible for any emotional tremor that occurred between the two of you, and you used to debate and explain a lot. Instead of being icy and uncaring, you're now able to see things clearly and from a higher vantage point. In this view, being emotionally neutral does not mean not caring. Rather, it means being present with one's own identity. Emotional avoidance and emotional detachment are very different. Integration gives rise to the former, whereas fear gives rise to the latter. One is the product of years of healing from inside, of identifying and addressing the source of your anguish, of tolerating your suffering until it is no longer a control over you. And in this quiet, a hallowed place emerges, one in which you are free from the desire to correct, defend, or persuade. This isn't punishment-induced quiet. It's the quiet of reclaiming your dignity and stopping to let other people's unresolved habits play havoc on your neurological system. When a spirit has transcended the need for constant upheaval in order to experience life, its calmness becomes apparent. The unconscious will control your life and be referred to as fate until you bring it into consciousness, as Jung pointed out. When emotional distancing manifests itself as a result of introspection, it's a sign that you've taken control of your life again, that you've stopped responding to assumptions as if they were fact, that you've understood that other people's frustration, bewilderment, and approval aren't your problems. Evolution, not indifference, is the reason you no longer react. You resonate no longer. At some time during the process of coming into your own, you'll come to terms with the fact that your psychic energy is finite. It should not be dispersed over every encounter, every argument, or every emotional request. Carl Jung considered libido, or mental energy, to be the soul's vital force rather than only an innate or sexual urge. Ideas, feelings, works of art, and significance are all propelled by this river. The moment you realize how precious it is, you will treat it with the utmost respect, as each response is a transaction. You waste energy and lose time, peace, and identity when you lash out, over-explain, chase closure, or get stuck in your thoughts. When you let yourself be carried away by the drama of other people, you lose sight of your own calm center. When you devote all your energy to a problem that was never yours to solve, you eventually start to feel more than just fatigued. You start to feel bewildered and estranged from your true self. That is the unspoken cost of being overly reactive emotionally. Though it may seem reasonable at the time, it always leads to a residue, a depletion, and an inward quiet that is no longer peaceful, but rather empty. At that point, the introspective process starts. You begin to monitor the expenditure of your energy. A single text message has the power to take over your neurological system in an instant, and an unfinished discussion can occupy your thoughts for weeks without paying rent. Not everyone has a right to tap into your emotional well, and that shift occurs when you become aware of that. That being there, listening and caring are not demands, but rather holy sacrifices. The emotional fireworks, drama, passion, and music that were once there now little more than background noise. Your inner frequency has shifted, not that you've grown emotionally distant. You no longer find solace in the disorder that reflected your inner discord. Instead, you feel alienated and out of sync with it. You choose to remain motionless instead. You go with the serene route, the one that doesn't demand praise but gives your spirit a chance to recharge. You may regain control of your life by recovering your energy. Just so, I've decided to cut ties with those talks that exhaust me. People who are determined to misunderstand me are no longer given my performances. This isn't disconnection. It's commitment, dedication to your own wholeness, clarity, and the life you're creating. You no longer give up your core in pursuit of an illusion of connection. The more you limit your energy consumption, the better your vision will be. The further you go from reactive spirals, the stronger the sense of self-presence becomes. Not getting better than other people is evolution, but getting back to yourself to the point that you don't allow yourself be consumed by chaos at all times is. You've realized the need of preserving your energy, not because you're afraid, but because you appreciate the woman you're growing into, and she can't be sustained by the same behaviors that kept her emotionally stable before. And that change marks the start of freedom. After going through a period of emotional growth, you may experience a quiet that is neither empty nor familiar. Your disengagement seems like being exiled after years of being defined by reactivity, entanglement, and the need to be understood. On the other hand, it is initiation, not banishment. The period of solitude that follows a life change is holy, not damned. Separation from the group's psyche is essential for reclaiming our most individual, authentic, and complete selves. Carl Jung referred to this period as the sacred solitude of individuation. Sometimes, after you stop connecting with dysfunction, you'll find that you're all by yourself. You are unlovable not because you have healed, but because the prior relationships were based on your wounded self. Those who were once able to connect with you through upheaval will find it increasingly difficult to reach you as you enter a state of emotional neutrality. For people who thrive on chaos, your serenity is a sign of remoteness. People who are counting on you to not be there now feel rejected by your boundaries, and others around you have to sit with uncharted areas of themselves because of how loud your silence is. Because of evolution, you will lose some friends, but you will also discover who you are. You miss them, but you also miss the you who relied on them, who could have listened through the chaos, who could have been a comfort, a mediator, or a safe haven for your emotions. When that version fades away, what's left is uncharted territory, empty, calm, and unknown. The mind, which was once engulfed by intense emotions, now serves as a conduit for lucidity. The once inflamed heart now beats softly, unconcerned by the agony that was once intolerable. Despite its sacredness, this place can be confusing. You will yearn for a companion to join you in this place, to acknowledge your progress, and to share the tranquility with you. Even when they do, you'll probably have to go it alone at first. People just aren't prepared to deal with the version of you that can't fulfill the responsibilities they gave you. Jung taught us that in order to fully individuate, we must face our true selves, unmasking our persona. By doing so, we dispel any and all notions that we formerly belonged. This shedding isn't showy. It's the soul getting back to being itself, and it's primal and silent. Therefore, rather than dreading it, embrace solitude when it strikes. What this signifies is that the codependent attachments are beginning to fade, the noise and diversions are vanishing, and something lovely is awakening in the stillness of this emptiness. Protecting what matters most to you shapes who you are, rather than what you tolerate. You are the only one who can handle this new you, even if everyone else is struggling. As her emotions change, you cradle her in your arms and whisper the words she's longed to hear. You're not alone. I'm here, and I'm not leaving this time. This quiet isn't empty, but rather strange, and it follows a period of emotional growth. Your disengagement seems like being exiled after years of being defined by reactivity, entanglement, and the need to be understood. On the other hand, it is initiation, not banishment. The period of solitude that follows a life change is holy, not damned. Separation from the group's psyche is essential for reclaiming our most individual, authentic, and complete selves. Carl Jung referred to this period as the sacred solitude of individuation. You may feel lonely once you've risen to emotional neutrality, and no longer resonate with dysfunction. This isn't because you're unlovable. It's because the old relationships were bound to your wounded self, and that self is no longer present. You grow more inaccessible, particularly to individuals who previously could only reach you in the midst of mayhem. For people who thrive on chaos, your serenity is a sign of remoteness. For others who are counting on you to not set limits, your decision to do so may seem like a rejection. The weight of your quiet compels those around you to confront aspects of themselves they've never encountered before. Evolution comes at a price. Strangers depart, but you emerge stronger. You miss them, but you also miss the you who relied on them, who could have listened through the chaos, who could have been a comfort, a mediator, or a safe haven for your emotions. When that version fades away, what's left is uncharted territory, empty, calm, and unknown. The mind, which was once engulfed by intense emotions, now serves as a conduit for lucidity. The once inflamed heart now beats softly, unconcerned by the agony that was once intolerable. Despite its sacredness, this place can be confusing. You will yearn for a companion to join you in this place, to acknowledge your progress, and to share the tranquility with you. Even when they do, you'll probably have to go it alone at first. People just aren't prepared to deal with the version of you that can't fulfill the responsibilities they gave you. Jung taught us that in order to fully individuate, we must face our true selves, unmasking our persona. By doing so, we dispel any and all notions that we formerly belonged. This shedding isn't showy. It's the soul getting back to being itself, and it's primal and silent. Therefore, rather than dreading it, embrace solitude when it strikes. What this signifies is that the codependent attachments are beginning to fade, the noise and diversions are vanishing, and something lovely is awakening in the stillness of this emptiness. At this very moment, what you choose to endure is less important than what you choose to safeguard. You are the only one who can handle this new you, even if everyone else is struggling. You cradle her in a placid embrace. You have complete control over her. You hush the words she's been longing to hear. You're not alone. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. At some point in every profound change, you come to terms with the fact that you're drastically different. That person no longer responds, over-explains, overgives, and overstays. It's not that you no longer care. It's that you began to awaken. You are not made colder by the awakening. Rather, it washed you clean. The process of individuation, in which we shed our conditioned identities and become authentic versions of ourselves, is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of this inner rebirth. This person you are now didn't just appear out of nowhere. It required innumerable emotional storms, betrayals that shattered your heart, patterns that persisted until they educated you, and moments of quiet that reflected your own voice. You disconnected in order to heal, not to establish a point. Your truth no longer feels like it needs defending, thus you no longer feel the impulse to do so. Peace is something you provide yourself, not something other people owe you, so you stop chasing closure. That changed from something that pleaded for comprehension. Its pleading has given way to its basic respiration. A lucidity that had been hidden beneath 1,000 emotional negotiations is now exposed in that breath. You have lost all interest in trying to persuade people of anything, your value, your point of view, or even your affection. The war is finally done. You've left the arena because you realized the true battle was never with them, but with your lower, less noble selves that refuse to rise above. Then those pieces stopped being the leader. You no longer need to waste time and energy on relationships that were only good at taking. From discussions that respected your quietness alone, you have recovered your voice. You've finally broken free from the need to sugarcoat the reality in order to appease other people and have begun to celebrate your progress, flaws and all. You are not to blame for that misunderstanding. People are correct when they claim you've changed. You really have. You can grin graciously at their statement, rather than arrogantly, because it reminds you of how long you stuck to the version of yourself that prioritized your comfort over your truth. How much did it cost you? You seem to recall. You've changed so much from your past self. And that's exactly the purpose. It wasn't a disappearing, it was a becoming, the shedding, the silence, the distance. Finally reaching a point where she can sit quietly with her spirit, unaffected by ambient sounds. A person who has come to understand that peace isn't a passive state, but rather a force that is formed via the crucible of conflict. Becoming someone who has found her position, who doesn't feel the need to prove herself because she has already found it. Nothing stays the same after you get there. It's not that the world changes to accommodate you, but rather that you stop bending over backward for things that don't support your development. By breaking free of your own survival patterns, you have not only transformed, but also returned to the authentic version of yourself that was always hiding behind your projections, fears, and masks. Not the finish, but the beginning. Their anarchy used to reflect all the things you hadn't confronted within yourself. Their wrath set off your feelings of shame, and their retreat set off your anxiety at being left alone. Their erratic behavior caused you to question your own judgment, and the emotional tornado you became entangled in had nothing to do with them at all. It had everything to do with the broken parts of you that held on to the belief that you had to earn love in order to feel secure. Carl Jung frequently discussed projection, an unconscious process wherein we project our rejected selves onto other people, identifying with them what we have rejected about ourselves. You drew partnerships that made you feel worse when you weren't compassionate enough to meet your own anguish. The mayhem wasn't chance, it revealed something. It revealed the areas where your healing process had fallen short. Something changed, though, as you progressed. What used to set you off on a downward spiral is now merely a flicker. You feel as if the anger, guilt trips, and abrupt silence are passing through you like the wind instead of landing like sharp knives. You can still sense the energy through an open window, but you won't be able to absorb it. To put it simply, that is the mark of true growth. The neurological system starts to relax after being hardwired for hypervigilance. Not because you've become emotionally detached, but because you're out of sync with the dysfunction. It doesn't erupt in reaction to every sudden change or emotional stab. As soon as the traumatic event loses its impact, the trauma connection breaks. You used to react, defend, and eventually collapse as you lived with your wounds. From this integrated spot, where you realize this isn't about you, you can now reply from your center. They are projecting their reality onto you, and you are not to blame when they explode. Their shallow adoration has nothing to do with your value. You are truly freed by this emotional neutrality, which people accuse you of and call frigid. In the absence of the previously visible scars, you are finally able to look clearly in the mirror. Your emotional state is no longer controlled by their actions. You no longer seek their approval to be complete, therefore there's no need to make them change or mend them for you to be okay. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakens? That's right, you've awakened, and now the mirror isn't a battleground, but rather a lens through which you could distinguish with quiet strength what you intend to deal with and what you intend to avoid. Because disorder is no longer your soul's language. You're no longer compelled to respond to it. To be emotionally neutral is not to be emotionally apathetic. Rather, it is the holy byproduct of shadow integration, the profound psychological process by which the hidden, rejected, and disowned aspects of one's identity are revealed. It is the peaceful arriving at a place where you can be yourself without reacting, rescuing, or proving anything. According to Carl Jung, that which you resist persists in relationships. Our negative reactions to other people's disorder, manipulation, or retreat reflect our own internal struggles with acceptance. The mind is easily swayed before the shadow is incorporated. You become entangled in their emotional manipulations. Their projections ensnare you like a falling body, and you end yourself playing parts you didn't ask for. The one who fixes things forgives others and takes the blame. Something significant begins to reveal itself the second you confront your shadow, which includes the anger you repressed, the fear you ignored, and the vulnerability you concealed. The want to emotionally save other people at the expense of your own center, the need to control, and the hooks all go away. When you pour your energy into someone who is still controlled by their shadow, you will eventually feel exhausted, frightened, and confused about your own boundaries. But you've learned your lesson. You have redirected your strength away from the battleground. You have finally stopped letting other people use your spirit as a blank slate. Their attempts to provoke you are futile, not because you lack empathy, but because you refuse to let them by your heart. The reason they can't reach you through the old wounds anymore is why they might say you're cold or aloof. You have shut the doors of guilt, needing to please, and fear of desertion with the gold of self-awareness. You're simply not responding. There's no resistance. That is the key distinction. In this context, neutrality is strength. Rather from being passive, is intensely self-aware. It's the line that declares, I will no longer bleed to keep the peace. It's the gentle no that holds the weight of 1,000 silent yes within you. Once you realize you're no longer caught up in another person's emotional tempest, a sense of peace washes over you. The beauty of shadow work is that it helps you regain your energy, quit settling for dysfunction, and return to yourself. Not as a protection mechanism, but as a safe haven, when you stop rescuing others who use your empathy as a weapon. The purpose of going through this agony is to change who you were before it started. Many attribute coldness, arrogance, or remoteness to silence when, in fact, what it really means is clarity. The energy that once bent to maintain a broken peace has now dried up. The stillness has ceased to explain, and presence has ceased to perform. Becoming a mirror they can't escape is what happens when you cease engaging in someone else's emotional turmoil, not by attacking or blaming, but by just retreating. According to Carl Jung, the shadow, that is the hidden aspect of our psyche that we try to hide or reject, does not go away just because we ignore it. It lurks unseen in our interactions, words, and reactions, and within our relationships. In many cases, our shadow only becomes apparent when the other person stops responding. The strength is in your tranquility. Their anguish may be projected onto you as you became engaged in the drama, playing the parts they had assigned you. As an emotional scapegoat, you served as an outlet for them. They have no one to play the game with now that you've stood aside, not angry, but peaceful. Finally, in that stillness, they are face to face with themselves, the one thing they have evaded their entire lives. Emotional neutrality is quietly undergoing a revolution. Defying their demands for your comfort is not the same as punishing or disregarding them. What you are doing is standing firm on your own 2 feet. Although it is a revelation, it feels like rejection to people who have never dealt with their own personal hurts. Your inaction causes a significant disturbance to their subconscious routine. I am no longer available for projections is the message it conveys, and the statement is as loud as thunder even without words. In a world where provocation is usually answered with defense, guilt with explanation, and disorder with rescue, most people aren't accustomed to being mirrored in quiet. But when that stops happening, when you stand firm without being aggressive or justifying your position, everything they've repressed, their fears, insecurities, and shame, rushes into the void it creates. Their shadow is aroused, not soothed, by your impartiality. They may accuse you of being haughty, aloof, or cold because of this. What you're doing is holy, so don't let their unease make you feel guilty. You've made the conscious decision to avoid draining your energy instead. By ending your role as a cushion for their emotional fallout, you are breaking the mental contract that states, I'll be responsible for how you feel. That is individuation, not cruelty. Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life, Jung observed, and the same is true with your calm. Caring deeply for oneself is really what appears to be disengagement. What may seem like a retreat is really a precious reconnection with your reality. Simply put, you stopped sacrificing your own needs for the sake of other people's comfort, which is not to say that you stopped caring. Doing so transformed you into a mirror that begs others to see themselves head-on for the first time. At some point on the road to individuation, you'll reach a point where the tempests that formerly swept you away start to pass without a hitch, and the voices that stabbed you in the back now ring out into nothingness. This is the process of growth, not apathy. This is the result of the soul's proclamation from the projection battlefield. You weren't really gone. The frequency of dysfunction just made you unreachable. According to Carl Jung, every mental wound is looking for a resonance. Without realizing it, we keep looking for the parts of other people that we haven't fixed in ourselves, hoping to be healed instead of harmed. Something changes drastically once you've done the work, after you've faced your shadow, healed your wounds, and gotten back to your center. You are now bored by the same disorder that energized you before. Since you have ceased to be receptive to its melodies, it will no longer sing your name. You have broken the energetic resonance of codependency, manipulation, and blame. Feelings of emptiness have replaced the magnetic pull. You're no longer deeply affected by things that used to do so. At most, you are aware of them. Peace does this. It reorganizes your neurological system. It rewrites your inner screenplay, and it renders you inaccessible to the roles you once played. Nobody can get in touch with you today, even if they were able to locate you in the midst of the turmoil. Not because you intentionally blocked them or because you despise them, but because they could only ever connect with the you who danced in the emotional storm. The moment you exit, they will be unable to break the silence with their cries. The beauty of remaining emotionally detached is this. Rather than a lack of love, it's the existence of harmony. You've had enough of playing the game where you have to give yourself up to win, where being quiet is the price of tranquility, and where being connected costs everything. You are no longer driven to persuade. You have discovered the most sacred truth in your silence. Your tranquility is not negotiable. Now you must decide whether to preserve it or fix it, because the drama loses its potency without your enthusiasm that annoys people who relied on your reaction. Without you and the chemistry to hold them together, the script falls apart and they are left to fend for themselves. In his writing, Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and this becoming manifests itself in various ways. A gentle rejection of patterns you've healed from, freedom from emotional bonds that are really attachments, and a sacred distancing from anything that doesn't align with your vibration." So it's true what they say. You have changed. You just stopped letting stories that distorted your identity use your emotions. Standing not above, but beyond the mayhem, the pull, and the reach is where you find true peace now. Everyone thinks you're hiding something, angst, indifference, or resentment, because you're no longer emotional. The deeper truth, though, is that you are not numb. You are complete. What appears to others as a lack of feeling is actually a profound sense of spiritual fullness, a tranquility within that remains unflinching even when challenged. They're not experiencing emptiness, but rather presence, your presence. That presence has become anchored and sovereign. It is no longer reactive. Your ability to distinguish has grown. Your capacity to feel has not diminished. You simply ceased leaking, not loving. Dynamics that thrived on disarray, ambiguity, and command and control no longer received your emotional energy. You have returned to something fundamental, your own center, by ceasing to fix what was never rightfully yours to bear. Integration, according to Carl Jung, can appear as detachment at first. This is not because we have given up on feeling, but rather because we have stopped connecting with the distorted aspects of our emotions. After facing and making sense of one shadow, the mind stops looking for familiar pain as a means of experiencing life. What you're experiencing is metamorphosis, not numbness. No longer do you conflate closeness with intensity, and you also no longer conflate response with connection. You're no longer a victim caught up in the web of other people's plans. Instead, you are now an observer of your own narrative. From this vantage point, what used to engulf you in anguish now flits by you like a breeze through trees, not because you stop feeling, but because you're no longer consumed by your feelings. After years of tangoing with projection, abandonment scars, overgiving, and emotional entanglement, this is the emotional serenity that can only be gained via fire. You have overcome this challenge, and the serenity you exude now is evidence of your growth, not your apathy. If someone ever tells you that you've changed, just grin and accept it. You didn't transform to run away from your emotions. Rather, you evolved so that you could experience them fully, to feel them without drowning, and to love alongside them. Without letting go of who you are, you may keep the truth in without letting it crush you. You possess this power. It is time for you to claim your return. Post a comment saying what you think. I'd rather have emotional calm. Use that as a mantra, a proclamation, or a guide. Additionally, before you depart, contemplate the following. Whom do you no longer respond to, and how does that reflect your progress? More than any unreceived apology, that response will reveal your progress. The end of loving doesn't come with emotional separation. It comes with mindful living. You have returned to your true self at last, my darling spirit. If you felt moved by this message, continue reading. Continuing on with the path of recovery, development, and self-exploration is what the following video is all about. Who knows? It could be the spiritual breakthrough you've been seeking all along. Use it right now. If you're interested in truth, change, and genuine personal growth, then subscribe, enable notifications, and become a part of our community. There are those who share your journey. In the following film, we'll meet again and keep on evolving into the perfect match we were born to be.